It's March already, which means it is time to do an update on what we've been reading in our homeschool and how we've been liking those books. If you're new here, I'm Christina. I'm a homeschool mom to 5 children, and they are currently in grades 3, 6, 9, 10, and 12. When we do read aloud, we do them all together. So when I'm choosing books, I have to have something for the child in grade 3, the child in grade 12. Some books are more geared toward the younger kids or geared towards the older kids, but I want all my children to get some knowledge, some entertainment, something from the books that I choose. Sometimes I do classics and more like the popular type books, but primarily the books that we do for Read Aloud are something to do with the science and the history of my younger 2 children, because I think that those books are part of their curriculum, basically. So this year that is Mammals and Story of the World, Volume 3. We read one book probably about every 2 weeks. That's what I have scheduled out for most books. So last time I did an update, we had just finished The Yearling. After that, we moved on to the book At the Sign of the Sugared Plum by Mary Hooper. It is a book that went along with our Story of the World. It's the story of a girl who lives in rural England and has the opportunity to go to London to help her sister in a store that she runs there. She has never been to the city before and she's so excited. But when she gets there, I believe it's 1665, don't quote me on that. I know it's in the 1600s. And what happens? The plague breaks out. And so it's the story of what these 2 sisters do during the plague in London. This is one of the best fiction books for children that I've read that talks about the plague, in my opinion. It's very specific. It talks about people's reactions, both the society and individual, things that they tried to do to stop from getting the plague, what their understanding of what this plague was and how it was spreading. But also with that brings, it's very detailed in some ways. So if you have a child who is younger, then I would say probably this book is for like grade maybe 7 or 8, maybe grade 8 and up. Or you have children who are really sensitive, you might want to pre-read. There was also a little bit of adult language. They used the word prostitute in the book, which surprised me. But that's part of the story of what was going on at that time. And like I said, it was very detailed about kind of what was going on at that time. So I have my little notes here. When we do read alouds, I ask my children to rate the book out of 5, and then I throw my rating in there and we kind of come up with a general consensus on what we would rate it. And for that book, we gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So a good book, but just be warned a little bit about the topic and the language, of course. Next, we moved on to an audiobook called Tiger Boy, and this is by Mitali Perkins. This book went along with our Mammals unit, and it's a story that takes place in West Bengal in India about a boy who lives next to a tiger conservation area, and one of the tiger cubs goes missing. There is a person who kind of controls the village, and he's trying to get this tiger cub to sell it on the black market. And this is a story of bribery, of politics, of conservation, of education. It's not a very long book, and I found it kind of eye-opening for me. Here in Canada, I have never experienced a reserve that deals with poaching, that has bribery involved. I feel like that's not something I've been exposed to here. So it was really interesting from that perspective. It did have some education about the tigers, not a whole lot, a little bit, more so about the conservation piece of it. So my kids gave it 4 out of 5. It was a good book, particularly that conservation piece of it. It also talked about like education, decisions, pressure from your family to be what they want you to be. It had a lot of those kind of more modern issues. I believe the book is only about 10 years old, and I gather it takes place pretty close to when it was written. I don't think it had a specific time frame, but that's kind of what I feel is when it took place. Then it was Christmas time, and so we decided to do another audiobook, and we did The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus. This is by L. Frank Baum. He's the author of The Wizard of Oz. Now, I read this book, or I listened to it the Christmas previous, and I really enjoyed it. Santa Claus is not a big part of our holidays. I try to avoid Christmas Santa decorations and things like that. So I think my kids were a little surprised when I said, hey, we're gonna listen to this book. It's different than like modern commercial Santa Claus though. It is more like woodland and fairies and nature-based, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain. I was really surprised because my kids gave it the rating. Oh, it's about how like Santa came to be. That's what the story's about. They gave it between 2.5 and 5. No, 4. I gave it 5. The oldest, or the highest mark was a 4, yes. So I was surprised. I think there's a lot of themes and a lot of layers in the book that perhaps not all the kids got. So interesting, but it was still an interesting book to listen to, a different perspective, and some liked it, some didn't. Then we moved on to this book here. This is the Burgess Animal Book for Children by Thornton W. Burgess. This one went along with our mammals unit. If you're not familiar with Thornton W. Burgess, he has written many books that are based on animal tales, but they're living books, so they have a lot of educational value in them, and that's exactly how we found this book. It is a Mother Nature figure or person, doesn't really say, who is teaching a creature about all these different animals. It's incredibly detailed in terms of this family, like the name of the family that they are all a part of, and different parts in North America, and their habits and their habitats and what they eat. So it's incredibly dense in information, but it's still a story. So younger kids, they may not take in all of those like little details, but they take in the story of it and remember little parts of it. And I'm actually impressed how much my younger kids did take in and remembered from this book. So we ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. I felt like it's definitely an older book and it could have been a little bit more kid-friendly. But just, it is chock full of so many great tidbits about different animals. Like each chapter is kind of different. I won't share them all, but there's like 2 pages of different animals that they talk about, and they compare, you know, this person is from this family. This is like how it's divided into units. So Danny's northern cousins and Nimbleheels, the banded and brown lemmings, and the jumping mouse. So that's like one category. So definitely this is a book that I would recommend. Then we moved on to this book here called The Dark Frigate. This is by Charles Boardman Hawes. This book went along with our Story of the World, and it's about a young boy. I'm trying to think if they had the year in here. I don't remember. A young boy who has lost his father. His father was a sailor. He's used to being on the seas, and so he kind of gets himself in some trouble, and he goes to find a boat to go sail the seas, and it ends up that when he's on this boat, it's overtaken by pirates. And it's a story of being a pirate vessel. It was not what I expected at all. It was quite violent. The language was incredibly difficult for me to read. Even some parts I was completely lost because the language is just so difficult. Let's see if I can give you an example. I mean, there's like the accent, but then there's the hard words as well. Nay, Philip, we think no ill of thee, but do thou have care to thy company. A foul trick hath been done to a mind to render us helpless at sea, so that we must crawl to the nearest land, where some base dunghill spirit is doubtless of a mind to leave our company. So like, and that's like not even close to the hard ones. So yeah, I didn't like it a lot, and my kids didn't really like it either. We ended up giving it 1 star. There was some merit to what life was like at that time, the language of that time, but I feel like the negatives outweigh the positives of this book, so I wouldn't recommend it. And that brings us to the last book that we just finished recently, which is Sophia's War, A Tale of the Revolution. It says by Avi. Avi is, I think, a group of authors, or like maybe it's a pen name, I'm not even sure. So it's 1776. And the Revolutionary War is going on, and it's the story of a young girl, Sophia, who is in New York. Her brother has been captured fighting for the rebels, and the British have overtaken New York, and now they're trying to survive. And she finds out, she eventually becomes like a spy, and she finds out that one of the main people from the rebel side, Benedict Arnold, is going to be, he's basically a traitor, and he's going to give information to the British. And so she tries to stop that. So I think this book, I found it a little bit slow in the beginning, but then it got better towards the end. I am not completely familiar with the names in the book. Like, I had heard Benedict Arnold before, but I didn't really know anything about him because I'm not American. And so I had to look that up. So I feel like it's based on accurate fact, because the other person, John Andre is the real name. This is kind of the wars and the fights that were going on, the back and forth. Like, this is true to the time frame. I was surprised how much my kids like this book. I was really surprised because they gave it 4 out of 5. I personally would have given it maybe about a 3, but they actually liked the story, which surprised me. So yeah, it's a story about her trying to stop this traitorous event from occurring and to protect the rebels so that they can go on to win the war, which, surprise, they do. So this is a good book. Like I said, my kids really enjoyed it, so I would recommend it. So those are the books that we've been reading lately. Let me know if you have read any of these. If you have similar thoughts, different thoughts, let me know. But also let me know what you're reading right now and what you would recommend, because I always love to get book recommendations, particularly for homeschool related courses and just for books to read to my kids. I hope that this finds you having a great day, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.